right, the obvious question is what really led to President Trump abruptly firing FBI Director James Comey. Sources tell CNN that longtime Trump confidant and advisor Roger Stone spoke to the president last week, recommended the dismissal. He's been an outspoken critic. Now, Stone is here this morning. He denies that he's the source of that story, and President Trump says he hasn't spoken to Stone in a long time. The former Trump campaign advisor Stone, he has a Netflix documentary premiering on Friday. Get Me Roger Stone, it's called, and he joins us now.
Chris, nice to see you.
It's good to have you. So, the idea that Comey had to go, you were in favor, yes?
Yes.
And did you communicate that to the president?
I've always taken the position that conversations between the president and I in terms of scope or content or frequency, and they're occasional, would remain private. And I'm certainly not going to contradict the president of the United States. That said, I think the president made the right decision. Mr. Comey had become unaccountable. He seemed to look into certain crimes that he thought were important, but not other crimes. And the president and the country has to have an FBI director who is not politicized and who they can trust.
We'll talk about the grounds. But, you know, look, facts matter.
Yes.
You know, they just do. And it matters that you communicate with the president. And I'm not saying that that's something that would be good or bad, but it either is or is not true. And you've said many times, as you know, you remember what you say, that you are in regular contact with the president.
I think I said occasionally. I don't speak to him every day. Donald Trump is his own man. No,
right,
there is no Karl Rove in this administration.
And I'm not suggesting otherwise. But what I'm saying is, why would he deny that he speaks with you on a regular, semi-regular basis? Why would he say he hasn't spoken to you in many months when you have said that's not true?
I actually don't think that's what he said. A while, I'm not sure how you define that. But beyond that, I'm just not going to characterize what have been private conversations. Also, Chris, I'm an inveterate memo writer. There are ways to communicate besides the telephone. And Donald Trump is a reader. So, look, I am a loyal supporter of Donald Trump. I believe he can be a transformational president. I understand his idiosyncratic leadership style. It worked in business. It will work in government. He wasn't vice president for 8 years like Nixon or for 4 years or 3 years like Lyndon Johnson. He hasn't been a student of the inside the Beltway machinations. He's got to get his sea legs, but so far so good.
Telling the truth is not something that you only learn through politics.
That's true.
That's why. And when he says he hasn't talked to you in a long time, and we know that's not true, it just raises questions. Well, if he's not telling the truth about this, then how do we believe him when we go down the line? That's why I keep bringing it up. I just don't understand why the president and people around him get in their own way by these types of misstatements.
But that'd be a question you'd have to direct to the president.
Boy, would I love to. He is invited on this show on a daily basis. It would be very helpful to the coverage if we could actually have the president answering direct questions. But he doesn't want the opportunity, Roger.
Well, obviously they have some strategy, and they're going to choose where he speaks. He likes you, Chris. And
that is an open question.
I don't think so.
But let's forget. I don't care about me. Let's talk about this situation.
Yes.
Read James Comey. The second paragraph in the letter, I think, tells us everything we need to know. If this was not about Comey's disposition on the Russian interference and potential collusion investigation, why include this paragraph, especially when it raises so many questions about whether or not this could be true? Thank you for, I greatly appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I'm not under investigation. Nevertheless, I concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice. You're not able to effectively lead the Bureau. Now, not only can I not find anybody in the FBI or anyone who knows James Comey who will give that a shred of credibility. They say Comey would never tell the president or someone around him that he had nothing to do with an investigation. But why do you put that in the letter if that's not the focus of where your head is on Comey?
Simple reason. Because the obvious analogies would be made to Richard Nixon and the Saturday Night Massacre. But it's apples and oranges. Watergate had been in full bloom for 18 months.
It's a criminal investigation.
Nixon himself was under investigation when he dismissed Archibald Cox. I'm sorry, but the Russian collusion scandal is a scandal in search of evidence. I've still seen no evidence that would ever hold up in a U.S. court of law of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign. I myself am very anxious to testify for the Senate and the House committees in public. I don't need a subpoena. I'm not asking for immunity. I'm going to give them whatever documents they've requested, although since I believe I've been under surveillance, they probably have them anyway. they can call me a dirty trickster, but there's one trick that's not in my bag: treason. And Donald Trump didn't need help from the Russians to beat Hillary Clinton.
All right. Now, you said apples and oranges. To say you haven't seen any evidence is not the same as saying there aren't legitimate questions to investigate. And it is hard to separate the President of the United States from an ongoing investigation of you and others around him and those potential questions. And firing James Comey is his right. Yes, there's a 10-year term and there's political questions, but the president can do it. But if it were about Hillary Clinton, do it the day you get in office. When you do it now, the timing tells the story. The Russian investigation, the reports of all these people around him saying he was white hot about what Comey said in the hearing last week, that he believed that Comey wasn't going to be loyal to him, that he was too into this, he wouldn't investigate the leaks like everything else. This Russian stuff is a hoax. Comey won't let it go. He's got to go. Isn't that the basis for this decision?
No, I don't think so. First of all, it is rather disappointing that Mr. Comey didn't seem to be interested in looking into the misuse of surveillance data by Susan Rice and perhaps others in the White House. Did not want to focus on the question of whether some at Trump Tower had in fact been under surveillance. Let me remind you, Mr. Comey and Admiral Rogers both said under oath in front of the House Intelligence Committee there was no surveillance at Trump Tower, none. That's not true.
How do we know?
How do we know? The New York Times on January 20th, page 1, wiretapped data used in probe of Trump associates. The story's pretty clear.
No, but look, the suggestion was that there were things done to target you guys. Other than the FISA warrant that was gotten out for Carter Page, which means they had probable cause that a judge agreed with to do surveillance on.
FISA warrants don't require probable cause.
Of course they do.
No, they do not.
They have specific attorneys who go in and they have to show.
The government gets a 99% rubber stamp from the FISA court.
That's about the outcome, not the basis.
Probable cause is not required.
Well, what do you think they still
They're required in front of a normal federal judge, which is the way you'd normally
the FISA
get a
judge.
warrant. Right. So.
What do you think? They just go in there and say, here,
Yes,
sign this, and
we
then walk away?
we have reason to believe. Yes, I do.
They have to present evidence. The judge has to look at it, agree with the probable cause basis, then they get the warrant. But that was only one person.
I don't agree with that, but go ahead.
That's fine. The other people who were involved here, Roger, we don't have any evidence that anybody was directly surveilled or wiretapped. That's why Comey came out and said, I don't know anything about that. But look, even the points that you're making here, good, bad, right, wrong, again indicate that that was the point of suspicion for the president about Comey. Why not just own it and say, I think this is a hoax. I think that this is misleading. Comey's doing this, and I don't think he should. He's got to go. That's what it seems by all indications.
Well, it's certainly what the media has decided the narrative is.
30 sources in some of this reporting of people in and around the White House saying exactly that.
I would like to have a full airing of the entire Russian question. Does anybody think that won't happen now? Just because you've lost James Comey doesn't mean that this investigation will be ended.
But how does it help? You just sent a message that if I don't like the way this is going, I'm going to take you out.
Because no one had any confidence in Mr. Comey. It is not incidental that he reopens the investigation into Hillary's email. 3 days later, he closes it again, saying the emails are benign. That's not true, by the way. The NYPD has copies, and I've seen some of these emails.
Well, we don't know that that's true.
Well,
right? You're talking about the Wiener emails.
But you will, because they will ultimately be public, in my view. But the point is, after that, you don't see a great resurgence by Hillary Clinton. I think Mr. Comey's worn out his credibility. I don't think the American people believe him anymore because they're not sure where he is or what he's doing. Clearly, the president came to believe that.
The sources inside the FBI say that the morale suggestions are inaccurate, that were in this memo that Rosenstein drafted hastily and then gave to the president. There are people who are cited in it, Alberto Gonzalez, Ayers, who worked for Bush 41. The Bush former deputy AG said, I think it's a sham, the basis of this. Alberto Gonzalez said, boy, the timing here raises a lot of big questions. Why create a canard? It would be legit to say everything you're saying right now, and therefore Comey has to go.
It's interesting because my sources in the Bureau, mostly at the agent level, are pretty happy. They believe the agency had become politicized under Mr. Comey. They're very unhappy.
Fair criticism, but again, it goes to timing. You had a long time to get rid of him if that's what was bothering you.
Well, you make a good point. I would have fired him from day one. But the president decided to give it a chance to see how it worked, and I think he made the right decision.
And you say there are no legitimate questions. I want to give you a chance to respond to this.
Sure.
It was one hell of a coincidence how you were front-running, that emails were going to come out about Podesta.
Never said anything.
Hillary was going to get
Never
a
said.
beating. I have your tweets. You know what you said.
Show me the word email. What I said was, Podesta's time in the barrel will come.
Yeah,
Translation.
What is that supposed to mean?
Here's what it means. His business activities with his brother Tony and Bill and Hillary Clinton, the gas deal, the uranium deal, the bank deal, that they would all come under scrutiny. They were. There were over 100 stories between the time I tweeted
it was just a coincidence that DNC emails that were his wound up coming out after you said that?
No, it was. This is subjection. It's conjecture on your part. Sure, I'd seen opposition research on their business activities. It was clear that this was newsworthy and would come out. I had no advanced knowledge that WikiLeaks would hack his email. I never said it. I never predicted it. I didn't know what form this would take.
You predicted he was going to get hit. You predicted that Hillary was going to get hit.
Yes.
And then they got hit.
I didn't say hashtag WikiLeaks. Bloomberg.
But you did say you were talking to Assange a lot.
No, I said that we had an intermediary who told me that.
Yeah, but you were like bragging about it. You were saying, I got a back channel to Assange.
They're called sources. Do you have them? I have them.
I do. But I'll tell you what, if someone then came to me and said, hey, that guy Assange, the intelligence community believes he's just a mouthpiece, a delivery device for Russian-hacked information.
Where's the proof of that? That's not true either. But here I guess, is the point.
You don't think that Russia was behind?
No, absolutely. Well, Julian Assange does not work for the Russians. That's an assessment of the FBI. When they say
census of 17 agencies,
all headed by political appointees that are holdovers from Obama. These are the people who told us Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. These are the people who denied that we were trafficking POWs to third-party countries in rendition, where they used torture. These are the people who said that the attack on Benghazi was caused by an anti-Islamic video. Why would we believe them? Their track record for credibility is not very good.
So you believe that there is a 17-agency, I guess, conspiracy to mislead the American people about the source of the hacking?
I believe that our intelligence agencies have become politicized. They are riddled with neocons, unhappy with the outcome of this election because they want a war over Syria. They want a no-fly zone. Donald Trump has no illusions about the Russian system or what a bad guy Vladimir Putin is.
He doesn't ever say that.
But he'd like to try to negotiate peace before we go to thermonuclear war.
But he never calls out Vladimir Putin despite good grounds to do so.
I don't think you attack somebody you're going to have to sit down and try to negotiate world peace with.
The president attacks people he's going to have to sit down with on a regular basis. You know that. It's part of his style. But not Putin.
Again, I don't think he has any illusions about the Russian gulag, about the corruptness and horrible system they have where they oppress gays, they oppress women, they oppress Christians, they oppress Jews. Perhaps he will, but I don't think right in front of a negotiation, which we're clearly going to have. I don't think Syria is worth going to war over. And I don't think the president thinks so either.
That's a fine position. Then we have yesterday, Lavrov comes out with our Secretary of State, mocks the media, asking questions about the Russian investigation. The media is not allowed in. You have a picture with Putin, with the Russian ambassador and the president. We get the information from Russian media sources. What kind of message is that supposed to send?
I'm not sure I understand your question. The president obviously has not only an obligation, but it's a formal part of his job to meet with the Russians.
Sure.
They have thermonuclear weapons. They're probably our greatest adversary.
You should meet, that's great. But to have Lavrov laughing at the American media while the Secretary of State stays mum, to have the president or have the White House shut out the media from that meeting so that we're forced to get information from Russian sources.
The American media has continued to promote the myth of Russian collusion without any evidence. I'm ready for evidence. Right now what we have is accusations. The New York Times, again, on January 20th, says the intelligence services have emails and records of financial transactions that prove Russian collusion. On the 31st, they add intercepts of phone conversations. Okay, where are they? Show us the evidence. Don't say you have it. Show it to us.
Well, first of all, it is completely normal for a federal investigation to not display its evidence. If it weren't for Comey and what he decided to do with the Hillary Clinton investigation, nobody would even entertain what you're saying right now, which is, yeah, they should put out their evidence right now.
Wait a minute.
They don't do that. You know they don't do that.
Adam Schiff, well, first of all, the intelligence committees in the House and Senate have access to this information. Mr. Schiff says on March 22nd he's seen more than consequential evidence
Right.
of collusion.
Right,
Then
that's
on
what
April 2nd, he says there is none.
That's what he says.
And then on April 2nd, he says
That's
there
right.
are none. Which is it? Dianne Feinstein repeats on the Senate, in the Senate hearing,
Right.
this notion that I know in advance about the hacking of Podesta's emails.
The tweets raise questions.
They're coincidental. There's no proof there.
Well, coincidences raise questions.
That's subjective. That is a supposition on your part. But then later in the day, she gives an interview right here at CNN. She says there's no evidence of Russian collusion. Which is it?
But here's the thing. You know that investigations can take a long time. They can also bear no fruit. But you know that it is premature to say, show us the evidence right now. We want to know. If there's collusion, where's the proof? It's premature. And you know it is. And it's creating a false expectation.
Chris, I know what's in my emails. I know what's in my phone conversations.
You're not the only person they're talking to.
And I've known Paul Manafort for 40 years.
He's not the only person they're talking to.
But I believe him. Carter Page appears to me to be inconsequential. If the Russians were colluding with Carter Page, they were wasting their time. He had no influence in the Trump campaign. None.
Right, but the question is, was he connected to the Trump campaign? What did he know? When did he know it?
And he denies it, yes. And he denies it. But let's let the process go forward. It's not going to be frozen if Mr. Comey leaves.
You just said, let the process go
forward. So
then stop asking for evidence right now when the process isn't played out.
You're right. Let me testify. When's that happening? I've watched Feinstein, Senator Warner, Senator Franken.
Right, but now you have
who was not funny as a
Now you have a
comedian,
which is it problem. You're saying, where's the proof? And then you're saying, let the process play out.
Yes, by letting us testify openly. Let's have total transparency here. I'm ready. Let's go. I'm not asking for immunity. Don't need a subpoena. Tomorrow would be soon enough.
Roger Stone, appreciate you being on to make the case here on New Day.
Thanks to be here.
All right, Allison.